I didn't even have my real clothes on. I was still in that hospital gown, the one that makes you feel like you're not a person, but just a chart with a wristband, when two police officers walked into my room. Not security, not a nurse. Police. One of them, tall and polite, in that I'm trying not to scare you way, nodded at the monitor, beeping beside my bed. Miss Nicole Carter? The tall one asked. Yes, I said. We need you to come with us. For what? I asked. He flipped open a folder. Your sister, Courtney, filed this report. She is alleging you committed theft of $45,000. Have you ever felt like the invisible one in your own family? Let me know your story down in the comments. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who is part of our community today. My stomach didn't just drop. It crystallized. $45,000. It was a precise number, a calculated lie designed to do maximum damage. But it wasn't just about the $45,000. In this state, a felony theft charge combined with a medical breakdown would be enough to have me declared legally incompetent. If I was a criminal and unstable, Courtney would automatically become the sole executor of our father's entire estate. The $45,000 was just the bait. The $350,000 inheritance was the real catch. Officer Eric held the paper steady, his eyes searching mine for the usual signs of guilt, a twitch, a stammer, a plea. He didn't find any. Instead, he found a woman who had just realized her life was being audited by a thief. The report was a masterpiece of fiction. According to Courtney, I had driven to her house at 12:15 a.m., bypassed her security, and cleared out the petty cash and jewelry from her safe. She had even included a detailed description of the threats I had allegedly made, claims that I was unstable, that I was bitter over the inheritance, that I was a danger to myself and others. It was clinical, really. She wasn't just lying about a crime. She was attempting to invalidate my entire existence. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was nearly 10 a.m. now. Then I looked at my arm, where the intravenous line fed a steady drip of fluids into my vein. The plastic felt cold against my skin, a reminder of how anchored I was to this mattress. I didn't cry. I didn't ask why she would do this. I knew why. This wasn't a family dispute. It was a hostile takeover. I had been the silent investor in their version of family for too long, footing the bill for their mistakes, while they treated me like a line item they could just delete. But the ledger was about to change. Officer, I said, my voice sounding like sharpened glass. Let's look at the math. This report says I was at her house at 12:15 this morning. Is that correct? Eric nodded, flipping to the second page. 12:15 a.m. She says you forced your way in. I nodded once, my mind moving with the precision of a spreadsheet. Okay, then let's make this simple. Ask the head nurse for my chart. My admission time, my vitals, my medication log, the exact time I was hooked to this intravenous line, all of it. The tall officer glanced at the monitor again, then back at the paper. You're saying you have proof you were here? I looked him dead in the eye. I'm saying the hospital has proof, and it has nothing to do with me remembering correctly. At exactly 12:15 a.m., I was being administered a post-operative sedative by a registered nurse. I haven't even been cleared to walk to the bathroom without assistance, let alone drive across the city to commit a burglary. The temperature in the room changed. It went from the heat of an accusation to the chill of a factual error. Eric hesitated. He wasn't a bad guy. He just worked for a system that usually sees the worst in people. But facts don't have feelings, and my facts were documented in an ironclad database. I'm going to need to see those records, Eric said, his tone shifting from authoritative to procedural. Ask for the medication administration record, I told him. It's a legal document. It has a digital signature and a timestamp for every milligram of medicine that entered my body. You won't find a window of 12 minutes, let alone the hour it would take to get to her house and back. I watched him step toward the door. I wasn't just defending myself. I was initiating a counter audit. Courtney thought my hospital bed was a trap. She thought I was a sitting duck, unable to move while she rewrote our history. She was wrong. In this building, every breath I took was recorded. Every minute was accounted for. She had picked the one place where a lie couldn't survive the light of a timestamp. "I'll be right back," Eric said. He stepped out, leaving the second officer by the door. I sat there, staring at the white ceiling tiles. I felt a strange sense of clarity. My compassion had been a luxury they had overdrafted for years, but today the account was closed. This wasn't revenge. It was accounting. And the balance was finally going to be settled. While I waited for Eric to return with the records, the silence in the room became a mirror. I stared at the door, but my mind was miles away, navigating the hallways of my childhood. Courtney had always been the event planner, the face of the family, the one who curated the smiles and the lighting. I was the structural engineer. I was the one who calculated the loads, checked the foundations, and made sure things didn't collapse. For years, I had been the invisible glue holding them together, and now I realized I was just a convenience they used until it became more profitable to discard me. I kept wondering, what did I ever do wrong? Why was my value always measured by how much of Courtney's mess I could sweep under the rug? 2 years ago, she botched a major contract for our father's construction project. She lost $45,000 on a non-refundable deposit for a site that wasn't even zoned for building. She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She just looked at me and said, "Fix it, Nicole. You're the smart one." And I did. I worked 16-hour days for 18 months. I took on side consulting jobs and skipped my own vacations to wire that money back into Dad's account so he wouldn't find out his golden daughter had failed. I thought I was protecting a legacy. I didn't realize I was just funding my own erasure. This is what people don't understand about growing up in the shadow of an achiever who has no core. I had been living in a prison without bars. It was a house made of glass and constant comparisons. When I was 12, my mother told me I was the reliable one, and back then, I believed it was a compliment. I didn't realize reliable was just family code for expendable. I had been programmed to survive by being useful, to find my worth in the gaps I could fill. Every time Courtney screamed or manipulated her way to the center of the room, I retreated into the structure. I built my career on steel and concrete because they were honest. They didn't lie about timestamps. They didn't pretend to love you while they picked your pockets. The hallway outside my room smelled like antiseptic and old secrets. I remembered the day after our father's funeral, when Courtney first mentioned the $350,000 in life insurance. She didn't talk about grief. She talked about allocation. She talked about how my independent career meant I didn't need the resources as much as she did to maintain her lifestyle. My compassion had been a luxury she had overdrafted for a lifetime. But the bank was closed. Looking at that intravenous line now, I realized I wasn't the weak one. I was the only one in that family who knew how to build something that could stand on its own. Courtney was a parasite who had finally run out of hosts. She thought she was trapping me in this room, but she had actually given me the one thing I never had, a documented boundary. For the first time in 28 years, I wasn't fixing her problem. I was becoming her consequence. The clicking of heels down the hallway was the first sign. It was a sound I knew by heart, the rhythmic, sharp staccato of a woman who believes the world is her personal runway. Courtney appeared in the doorway seconds later, a cream-colored cardigan draped over her shoulders, and an expression of manufactured concern that she usually saved for charity galas. "Oh my God, Nicole," she sighed, clutching her chest. "Is she okay?" "Officer, I came as soon as I heard she was awake." Officer Eric didn't move. He stood like a human pause button, blocking her view of my bed. "Are you Courtney Walker?" he asked, his voice flat. Courtney blinked, her concerned sister mask slipping just a fraction. "Yes," she said quickly. "I'm her sister." I called because Eric cut her in, calm but firm. "We're verifying your timeline. The hospital records say your sister was admitted at 6:17 p.m. yesterday." I watched the tiny flicker of recalculation in her eyes. It was like watching an old computer try to process a corrupt file. "Well, she could have left," Courtney snapped, her voice losing its sweetness. "She's dramatic. She can be very unstable when she doesn't get her way." The nurse, who was still standing by my monitor, didn't wait for me to defend myself. She didn't leave, the nurse said, her tone tight. She's been monitored and medicated all night. She was receiving a sedative at 12:04 a.m. Courtney's face flushed a deep, angry red. She didn't look at the officers anymore. She looked at me. The mask was gone now, replaced by the raw, jagged edge of a woman whose leverage was evaporating. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" she hissed, ignoring the badges in the room. "You're really going to lie to the police from a hospital bed?" I didn't match her energy. I didn't raise my voice. I stayed in that cold, analytical space where numbers live. "Courtney," I said, "you told them I was at your house at 11:30. You said I stole $45,000 from your safe. Then you claimed I called you at 12:05 to threaten you." I tilted my head slightly. "Then this should be easy. If I called you, you have the call log. Show the officer your phone." Courtney's jaw clenched so hard I thought I heard it crack. She reached into her designer purse and pulled out her phone, holding it like a weapon. "I don't have to show you anything," she snapped at Eric. "I'm the victim here. She's trying to steal my inheritance. She knows Dad left $350,000 in insurance, and she's trying to freeze me out of the estate because she's greedy and irresponsible." "Ma'am," Eric said, his tone turning clinical, "if you refuse to show the call history that supports your report, that will be documented. Filing a false police report is a crime." Courtney's attorney-style confidence began to wobble. She realized she had boxed herself in. This was the exact moment liars hate, when the performance meets the procedure. It must have been deleted," she stammered, her voice getting louder and more defensive. "I clear my history. I have anxiety. You're harassing me." Now she had anxiety. 5 minutes ago, she had certainty. I sat there, a chart with a wristband, watching my sister self-destruct in high definition. She wasn't shocked by what she had done. She was shocked that I had stopped playing the role of the invisible victim. Her compassion had always been a performance, and today, the audience was walking out. This wasn't a breakdown. It was an audit, and Courtney was coming up empty. Just as Courtney was opening her mouth to launch into another scripted monologue about my supposed instability, my phone buzzed on the bedside table. The vibration sounded like a warning siren in the quiet of the room. I picked it up, my thumb hovering over the screen. It was a push notification from my banking app. "New device logged into your account. Location: Denver, Colorado. Minutes ago." I didn't panic. I didn't gasp. I looked at the screen with the cold detachment of an engineer reviewing a failed stress test. My sister was standing 3 feet away from me, her designer purse clutched to her chest like a shield, while her digital fingerprints were currently breaking into my life. Courtney had always been the event planner, the one who curated every detail to make things look perfect. But she had forgotten one thing. I built systems for a living. I understood the load-bearing capacity of a lie. "Officer Eric," I said, my voice as steady as the intravenous drip. "I need you to look at this." I turned the phone toward him. The blue light of the screen illuminated his face. A new device just logged into my primary account. Not an hour ago, right now, while my sister is standing here claiming I robbed her. Eric's eyes narrowed. He looked at the notification, then slowly turned his gaze toward Courtney. The air in the room didn't just cool. It froze. "Miss Walker," he said, "I'm going to need to see your phone. Now." Courtney's face went from an angry red to a ghostly, translucent white. That's impossible," she stammered. "She's setting me up. She probably scheduled that alert to go off." I didn't even look at her. I hit the button on the screen and called the bank's fraud department. I put it on speakerphone so the entire room could hear the audit of her soul. "This is Nicole Carter. I'm with law enforcement right now. I just received a login alert from an unauthorized device. Can you confirm if the recovery phone number ending in 4421 was used to bypass the security check?" "Bank rep, I can confirm that a one-time passcode was successfully verified via the secondary recovery number ending in 4421 at 12:05 a.m. today." I felt a surge of cold satisfaction. "Officer," I said, "that's my sister's number. She added herself as a backup contact 2 years ago when I was out on a job site without cell service. I never removed it. I thought I could trust her." But the login wasn't the only thing Courtney was doing. While the fraud rep kept talking, I opened my work cloud on my tablet. My blood turned to ice. Officer, look at the server logs. Someone is logged into my admin console right now trying to wipe the project directory. They've already attempted to delete 3 core blueprints. But Courtney forgot I'm an engineer. I don't just save files, I use version control with immutable backups. Every click she made to delete was actually being logged as a permanent record of her intrusion. She wasn't erasing my work. She was signing a digital confession. Officer, I whispered, showing him the tablet. She's not just stealing money. She's sabotaging my career. Eric reached out and took Courtney's purse. She tried to pull back, but he was faster. Inside, sitting right on top of her leather wallet, was a folder. He flipped it open. She had the original insurance claim, the one with my forged signature tucked inside her bag. She had been so sure I would still be under that she was planning to drive straight from my hospital bed to the insurance office to finalize the $350,000 payout. She didn't just want me gone. She wanted to use my deathbed as a waiting room for her payday. It had my signature at the bottom. I didn't sign that, I said, my voice lethal and quiet. Eric compared the signature on the paper to the digital signature on my hospital admission form. Forgery, he muttered. Identity theft. Sabotage. False reporting. He looked at his partner. We're done here. Secure the device and escort her out. Courtney began to scream, her polished facade finally shattering into 1,000 jagged pieces. But I just watched the timestamps on my screen. This wasn't a breakdown. It was a balance sheet. And for the first time in years, the numbers were in my favor. The screaming didn't stop until the elevator doors hissed shut behind them. Courtney was no longer the poised event planner with the cream-colored cardigan. She was a problem to be processed, a sequence of outbursts that the hospital staff watched with clinical detachment. They didn't cuff her in the hallway. This wasn't a television show, but they did something far more humiliating for a woman like her. They treated her as a statistical anomaly in an incident report. Officer Eric stayed in my room for a moment longer, his face a mask of professional boredom, because at this point, the evidence was doing all the talking. He looked at the stack of certified documents the hospital administrator had just handed him, the medication log, the hallway security footage, and the report from my bank. Just paper, just timestamps, and yet it felt like the final click of a lock. I need you to listen to this, I said, my voice small but steady. I tapped the voicemail notification that had just appeared from an unknown number. I put it on speakerphone, and Courtney's voice filled the room tight, angry, and way too confident. Nicole, listen, the recording hissed. I filed the report. Don't make me look stupid. Just tell them you misunderstood. If you don't, I swear I'll go to your bank again and finish it. The room went dead quiet. Even the nurse froze while checking my intravenous line. Eric didn't move for a second, his brain clearly switching from investigation to the realization that he had just heard a confession. That, he said quietly, is witness intimidation. He stepped into the hall and called his partner, his voice firm as he documented the threat to access the bank again. The next hour moved in a weird blur, half hospital noise, half quiet paperwork. It wasn't cinematic. It was just the kind of process that changes your life because it's documented. Eric sat by my bedside and took a supplemental statement, asking about the inheritance conflict and the motives behind Courtney's desperation. I answered short and clear, with no speeches or over-explaining. I didn't need to persuade anyone anymore. The timestamps were persuading for me. When the hospital administrator returned, she looked at me with a professional nod. Miss Carter, we've provided the certified documentation to law enforcement, she said. Also, if you want, we can flag your sister in our system to prevent her from visiting without your explicit authorization. I didn't hesitate for a single heartbeat. Do it, I said. That was the most satisfying thing all day, not the drama, but the policy. It was a system, a door that wouldn't open just because Courtney smiled or played the victim. Eric dropped a copy of the updated incident report on my tray table before he left. He tapped the line where they had documented the motive. Inheritance and financial control. You focus on getting well, he said. We'll handle the rest. As the room finally grew quiet, the kind of normal quiet hospitals have at night, I stared at my phone. I changed my passcodes. All of them. Not because I was paranoid, but because I was done living like my sister had a key to my life. I played her voicemail one last time, reminding myself of the one thing that is weirdly comforting when you're scared. Lies hate timestamps. She thought I was trapped in this bed, but she was wrong. I couldn't get up. But the proof could walk, and it did. The silence that followed Courtney's removal was heavier than the accusation she had arrived with. I sat back against the thin hospital pillow, my breath hitching in the quiet that only a room recently filled with screaming can hold. The nurse moved around me, her touch on my intravenous line more gentle now, as if she were trying to smooth out the jagged edges of the last hour. I watched the door. It was partially closed, a physical boundary that felt like the first honest contract I had ever signed. For years, I had been the silent investor in my sister's version of reality. I had provided the capital of my patience and the collateral of my own dreams to fund her performance. But as the sound of her receding cries faded into the distance of the hospital wing, I realized that the audit was finally complete. I rubbed my eyes, trying to summon a sense of regret or a flicker of familial grief, but there was only clarity. This wasn't a breakdown. It was a balance sheet. I looked at the monitor beeping beside me, tracking the rhythm of a heart that was finally beating for itself. Courtney's power had always been an illusion, a high-interest loan she took out against the reputation of a father who wasn't here to collect. She moved through the world with the confidence of a woman holding a full wallet, but today I saw the truth. Her wallet was empty. It had always been empty. She had spent 28 years trying to prove she was the one who mattered, while I was the one who actually built the life she was trying to steal. There is a fundamental difference between having and being, and I was seeing it now in the stark fluorescent light of the recovery ward. Courtney had the designer clothes, the cream-colored cardigan, the high-end event planning business, and the elite social circle. She had the appearance of success, but she didn't be anything. Her entire identity was a rented facade, maintained by the $350,000 she hoped to squeeze out of my father's death. She was a house built on sand, and I was the one who had been expected to act as the foundation. My kindness had been treated as a limitless resource, a debt they felt entitled to accrue without ever intending to settle the bill. Looking at the digital clock, I realized how quickly a legacy can turn into a liability. It took less than 60 minutes for her dream life to be exposed as a series of fraudulent entries. She thought that by labeling me as unstable, by making me a chart with a wristband, she could delete me from the family ledger. She believed that power came from the loudest voice and the most expensive lawyer. But real power, the kind that survives a storm, comes from the integrity of the structure. I had the engineering data, the project logs, and the cold, hard timestamps of my own life. I had the facts that didn't need to scream to be heard. I looked at my phone, now secured with a passcode that only I knew. The two-factor authentication alerts from earlier were still there, glowing like tiny beacons of victory. Courtney's attempt to sabotage my career and steal my inheritance wasn't just a crime, it was an admission. It was the moment she realized she couldn't outbuild me, so she tried to burn the site down. But she forgot that I was the one who designed the fire suppression systems. I sat in the stillness, feeling the weight of her manipulation finally lift off my chest. I wasn't the disappointment. I wasn't the backup plan. I was the architect of my own survival, and for the first time in my life, the numbers in my account were perfectly balanced. Courtney was gone, and for the first time, I could finally see the horizon without her shadow blocking the sun. Winter in Denver has a way of washing everything clean. Standing on the balcony of my new engineering firm, looking out at the city skyline, I realize I don't see the shadow of my sister anymore. Courtney is currently serving a 4-year sentence for identity theft, forgery, and witness intimidation. She thought she was the architect of my destruction, but she turned out to be just the demolition crew I needed to clear the site for a better life. I finished the $350,000 city project 3 weeks ago. It stands tall, balanced, and honest, just like me. I used my portion of the inheritance to establish a legal defense fund for survivors of domestic and family manipulation. We provide digital audits and security training for people whose families have turned their lives into a war zone. I am no longer the silent investor in someone else's performance. I am the primary stakeholder in my own peace. To those of you listening, especially the ones who have always felt like the invisible one, the one at the edge of the family photo, the one who is only ever the reliable one, this is for you. I know the weight of the labels they try to stick on you. Unstable, sensitive, difficult. I know the hollow ache of waiting for an apology that will never be as loud as the insult. But here is the truth I found in that hospital bed. Your worth is not a negotiation. It is a fact. You do not need their permission to be luminous. You do not need their inclusion to be whole. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is stop fixing the problems they create and start becoming their consequence. Build your boundaries like they are made of reinforced steel. Secure your life like it is the most valuable asset you own. Because it is. Lies hate timestamps, and they hate people who are brave enough to stand in the light of the truth. If you believe that your truth has a voice, let it be heard. Thank you for being part of this journey. If Nicole's story gave you the courage to set your own boundaries, hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories of justice. Remember, the numbers in your life will always balance once you finally stop paying for people who only want to see you fail.